Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Here's Sir William Baguley. That's what I've named him. I've had him for a number of years. I haven't posted a video in a while, but I've been working on a report, and I want to thank Dorothy Bentley Smith. She reworked the first page of it. She's a historian over in Macclesfield, Lincolnshire, Cheshire, England, and she's helped me quite a bit on work, and I've got to meet her. She's got a lot of nice works out if you want to look her up. Her name's Dorothy Bentley Smith. You'll find her on Amazon. And this is a report I did. It's kind of interesting. It deals with everything from forgeries to a little bit of my correspondence with the College of Arms and things of that nature. So I'm just going to dive into it here and read it to you. It's easier for me to read to you than to try to just fly it at you, but it's called Baguley Family History Changers. The report is in respect of the Baguley family of Cheshire, though the hall is now located in Wythenshawe in Lincolnshire. It was originally in the county of Cheshire before the boundary change. I have been researching this family for 30 years, and I must say that it's not easy, as very little research has been conducted on this noble family, either by previous historians who did not dive deeply enough into the records, or they accepted the previous written histories as Ormond's and the histories of the writings of Peter Lester. This has resulted in a real neglect of research into the Baguley family. A little about myself. My name is Hurstel Edward Baguley. I became interested in the family when growing up, my great-uncle Saul Baguley, who was more like a grandfather, regaled stories of family history to me as a youth. He claimed that he was a descendant of Cheshire blue bloods and that his name was originally pronounced and spelled Baguley, and that his ancestors were knights and he was related to William the Conqueror. It was impressive coming from a man in the mountains of eastern Kentucky, but this was a well-heralded tradition of Appalachian mountain folk, of preserving oral family histories, which has been lost somewhat with the modern world, enriching these once isolated communities. The other story he used to tell was that there was two brothers sent to America for stealing a goose. I did later see this reference in a history book. The term used was stealing the golden goose. For those coming to the colonies. We did push for a grant with the York Herald, Sir Henry Pasting Bedingfield, who was the York Herald at the time when my mom and dad went to England and was putting in for a grant of arms, who mentioned, and this is from his own words and his report to me, this report is complex, and this is from his own words, this report is complex and at times difficult to follow owing to the age of many references. However, our concern is with ownership of arms and not property. I believe it wasn't too long after this that the College of Arms modernized and began recognizing adopted children. The York Herald basically said the family died out when Sir William Baguley died. His daughter Isabella married Thomas Daners, and his other daughter Ellen married John Lee. They became heraldic heiresses on the death of their brother John Baguley around 1360, in the reign of Edward III of England. The York Herald was correct. It was difficult to follow because evidence and actual charters and various rolls like the recognition did not indicate the extinction of the Baguley line. Thomas Woodcock, who later became Garter King of Arms, then Somerset Herald, had mentioned how in 1575 William Flower granted an augmentation to Piers Lee, or sometimes you would hear it called Pierre Lee, of Lyme for an ancestor of the same name in respect of exploits at the Battle of Crecy. This being an Eshton sable, meaning black, semi-mullets charged with an arm and bowed grasping a pendant of St. George. It also lists Piers Lee in the Visitation of Cheshire, having been at Crecy. This is the book the College of Arms uses to prove genealogies and grants of arms, but it's historically inaccurate. And this is a note here on this part from Dorothy Bentley Smith, historian Cheshire. Peter Lee of Lyme fought in the Battle of Agincourt in 1415. After the battle, changed his Christian name to the French Pierre or Piers. See Military Macclesfield and Britain's Battles, 1066, 1656, page 71. I did add an extra note to her work there, and in that Pearsley was killed at Agincourt, and tradition says his dog Bitch guarded his body, and the Lyme Mastiffs, descendant from Bitch, or from her, guarded his body, and kept him from being caught at the battle. Now, his father, Piers's father, that is, was Pierre Lee, who was in some French campaigns, but was executed in 1399 for serving Richard II. So, she is correct, but it was probably Piers Lee the second's father, or Piers Lee the first, who had adopted that name when he was serving Richard II. But this did not stop the Lee family footmen. Up to the 1700s, they were wearing a spare sleeve on the back of their coat, signifying that Piers Lee standard-bearing arm that saved the Black Prince's banner at the battle. And even into 1806, there was this grant to the illegitimate children of Peter Lee. The Lees changed their surname to inherit the land and title, as seen from charters. Therefore, there were the main male lines extinct. Of all involved in the agreement, it should have reverted back to the grantor of the lands next leaving Baguley line, or male Baguley line, which would have, been like a cousin of the grantor of John Baguley. Should have went back to that once the other two lines died out between the Hyde and the Lee family. Those grants should have reverted back to the first grantee's family. And I did submit evidence to the Garter King of Arms, Peter Gwyn Jones, who agreed there was evidence of what I said in the family not dying out, but it was turning into a money thing with the college. So I appealed to the Duke of Norfolk and finally the Queen, but with no satisfaction in these cases. So I will deliver to you and see your thoughts, Herschel Edward Baguley. So, going back on that, basically, it mentions in the Visitation of Cheshire that Piers Lee, or Pierre Lee, was a hero at the Battle of Crecy. But he wasn't born yet, and his father didn't fight there either. But he did fight in some French campaigns. Now, this did fall possibly on Piers Lee's first father, which was Thomas Daniels, or Daniels, you'll see it sometimes pronounced, and he fought at Crecy and did receive a grant. Now, he was married to Isabella, and Isabella was the daughter of Sir William Baguley. So that's where the Baguley line came in. So I'm going to get back to reading here a little bit. To open up with some basic genealogy, which I was just mentioning. So to make things easy to follow, Sir William Baguley had Ellen Baguley and Isabella Baguley. And John, this somewhat coincides with the Visitation, he had John Baguley too. And this somewhat, coincides with the Visitation. So when John dies, his sisters became heiresses to his estate. We can pinpoint the date of the so-called extinction, as we know Ellen has a post-mortem in 1359. She was heir to her uncle, Thomas Corona. So she was a Corona heir. This is from a different marriage, somewhat. William may have been married 2 to 3 times. So this is a product of a different marriage. And this was by her mother, Lucy Corona, one of Sir William Baguley's wives. So that is one heiress dead by 1359. Her sister Isabella was married twice, possibly John Hyde, then Thomas Daniels, or Daniels. The family of Hyde also adopted the arms of Baguley, inverting the colors of yellow lozenges and blazing of blue, and I think they added a chevron of ore too, or yellow. Thomas Daniels was at Crecy. Thomas Daniels and Isabella, who some historians say was a product of another marriage of Sir William Baguley's, to Clement Cheadle, and daughter and heir of Roger Cheadle. I reference the work of past historians, but like using documents of the time, I like to use, basically I'm saying I like to use, I will read the old historians' works, but I like to use actual grants and documents recognition rolls, everything of that time period. So, so I will reference the historians, but I do like using documents of the time. So we can prove Isabella was the product of William Baguley and Clemens Cheadle, because on May 18th, 1377, an indenture of John Savage and his wife Margaret, and then other William Buckley of Cheadle, and on the 10th of June, each with parties with 6 knights and esquires, will meet in Cheadle to work out her inheritance. And this is in the wards of National Archives 2/16/531/19. And then DCH/E/275 plea in the Azizi's novel Des Sign, April 23rd, 1370, to recognize of John Savage and Margaret Dayners and Sir Henry Trafford, Richard, son of John Ratcliffe, and former husband of child of Margaret. So others have unjustly tried to take land. Her claim is wife of John, cousin, heir of the said Clements, via Isabella, daughter of the said Clements, who was married to William Baguley. The end document says John and Margaret go sign die. Now Margaret is a granddaughter of Sir William Baguley through her mother, Isabella. Isabella Baguley and Thomas Dayners had a daughter, Margaret. We can pinpoint Isabella's death being before 1360, as Margaret was ward in the King's Chancery, and Edward's death being before 1360. And Isabella's death being before 1360, as Margaret was ward in the King's Chancery, and Edward III had a writ for Abbot of Whaley, Thomas Latham, Henry Haydock, and John Cocken, as Margaret was in marriage with John Radcliffe. She was of tender age, meaning very young, and the king wanted to make sure it wasn't against her will, which they ruled was not. So we know Isabella and Thomas Dayners are both dead by 1360, or as early as 1349, because Margaret is a ward. There is no record of issue between John Radcliffe and Margaret. She may have been too young to consummate the marriage. We do know the Radcliffes were her caregivers, and her estates in Hanley, Holly, Lyme were in disrepair. So all the historians prior to me have listed Margaret being married thrice. First to John Radcliffe, second to John Savage, third to Pierre Lee in 1388. And they had to get a dispensation from the Pope, as they were related. Piers was beheaded in 1399 for serving Richard II. This is what all historians, old and new, report. But I found a history changer in the recognition rolls. And in Parliamentary Papers, Volume 31 of the Parliamentary House of Commons, Marjorie, wife of John Savage, formerly wife of John Baguley, sues Richard, son of William Baguley, and William, son of John Lee, of a dower of 23 acres in the manor of Baguley. And she sues Rosia and her son, John, widow of Sir William Baguley, for 6 massages and 60 acres in Norworthen, and a property in Baguley. I'll mention later another property. Rosia, looking at one charter, appears to be a Lee herself. She received 120 sterling from Isabella Lee, or Baguley, probably her stepdaughter, for oratory at Baguley. There's a very few notes in front of me, so this is from memory, which when I was typing it was. Rosia had a son, John, as they are both being sued for dowry in the 14th year of Edward III's reign, by Alice Kegworth, wife of Richard Kegworth, for massage in 9 acres and Norworthen about 1341, and in recognition rolls, or recognizance rolls. But we do know which John it. We don't know which John it is. There are several Johns running around at the time, so, and Williams, and so it's hard to tell which one he was. There was a few about this time, but so close that they would have been related no matter which John it was. They would have needed a dispensation from the Pope too for their marriage. So Margaret would have needed another dispensation from the Pope to get married again. And forgive my pronunciation on things, John Baguley and Margaret Daners may have had issue as Marjorie Baguley, her son, is signing rights to lands he held of Robert Delawade and lands in Baguley to William, son of William Baguley. You can find this in the DLT/B1 Liber A of the Cheshire Record Office. Peter Leicester's work, okay? We do know a Margaret Baguley in 1357 was taken by John Leicester from her house in Marley to Ralph Marley's Hall, uncle to John Leicester, and it wasn't against her will, and that the John said with a tunic and clothes to the value of 15 sterling from the indictment roll. That's from the indictment roll. So it appears the same Margaret, and she'd been probably pretty young too at the time, was taken by John Leicester, who was a known bully at that time, and not against her will though. So you can kind of see there's kind of a thing going on right now between the Bagleys and this family, So we can take from the above, we know by 1360 the estates of Sir William have been settled upon his daughters. But if they were complete heiresses, like the College of Arms says, why would she need to sue for dowry of lands in Baguley, of property she would be entitled to, and how would Valise be sued because William Baguley, or William Lee of Baguley, was the son of Ellen Baguley, the heiress also of Baguley, and Richard, son of William Baguley, is still in possession of land in Baguley. I'll try to shed some light on some of this. I know this is probably pretty confusing, but like I said, I will do my best to shed some light on this. But basically what you're saying the College of Arms is saying these two ladies were heraldic heiresses, okay, and that, Ellen was an heiress and Isabella was an heiress. But here you can still see there's a conflict with land in Baguley after William's death and after, Sir William's death. And you could still see in the recognition rolls against even what the historians wrote at that time of Peter Leicester and Ormerod, that they're still fighting for the property in this. So I'm going to shed some light on this property. It's kind of interesting anyways. In 1260, or the 45th year of the reign of Henry III, William, son of Peter Baguley, grants John, son of Hammond Baguley, assert in the town of Baguley called Innisbrook Flocus, which William, and this William was probably the William Baguley that's mentioned as rector at St. Michael's in 1272, and St. Michael's Church in Macclesfield. And he gave Peter by charter for 12 denarii for services, saving that the John gives yearly to William his third best pig. The estate seemed split between many through the Middle Ages until Sir William Baguley seemed to have acquired most of this matter, being for a time referred to William's Park. And you'll see that in Peter Leicester's work, where finally there's a grant, and Bagley's not being mentioned as Baguley anymore. It's being mentioned as William's Park, which is Sir William, probably Sir William II, that had acquired most of this property. And that's in Peter Leicester's work. Also, the hall was screened off, and you can find that. That's well known with the archaeologists of Baguley Hall and stuff like that. That the hall was screened off, and like I said, this, when something's screened off, and I'm trying to keep up with all this at the same time myself. that was a medieval sign that there was more than one heir to a property. When you had a screened off property, you had them living in different sections of the hall. And so it's screened off, and I lost my place, but I'm going to keep going instead of starting over. And it's, like I said, it's split between the Middle Ages. So William Baguley seemed to have acquired most of the manor, being for a time referred to William's Park, like I mentioned. This is mentioned in a charter of William's Park and Peter Leicester's work. Also, the hall was screened off. This shows there was more than one heir living in Baguley Hall. Also, some bark from one of the timbers in the hall showed to come from lime, and many wondered how it found its way into Baguley Hall. And in 1350 in mine, I believe, and I got this from the book I mentioned earlier of